And I was very excited about it until I discovered that the small town in which I've chosen to stay is not just part of the opioid capital of America, but this small town is actually the nexus of the whole thing.
I'm here with Jojo Moyes, best-selling author of Me Before You, to talk about her new book and the third in the Louisa Clark. Is it a trilogy? Are you stopping after this? Sorry.
I am stopping.
You're stopping. All right, so the third in the Louisa Clark trilogy. Now, before I talk to Jojo, here are a few statistics. 8,298 Jojo Moyes novels were sold each day in UK territories, wherever that is, in 2016. That's one novel sold every 10.4 seconds, which apparently, if you stacked them up, would reach the height of 205 Empire State Buildings. So not many books then, Jojo.
I didn't actually know that stat till a couple of weeks ago, and I'm quite glad I didn't know it because I think it would have just frozen me.
We're going to talk about the 6 objects that you've brought in a minute, but before we do that, tell us a little bit about Still Me for people who haven't got to read it yet.
Okay, so Still Me, as you said, is the third book in the Louisa Clark trilogy. It's what happens when Louisa moves forward with her life and goes to New York to work for a wealthy family based on Central Park. And she thinks it's going to be her great adventure, but as with all these things, life proves to be a little bit more complicated. She's stuck trying to maintain her relationship in London, but also finds that there is somebody who reminds her very much of Will in New York, and that creates problems. So there's a lot of stuff going on, but I don't really want to say too much.
So we won't talk too much about the book at all. But one of the big things about this book is that Louisa's one of her big things is about saying yes to things.
Yes.
Is that a Jojo thing? Has Me Before You found you saying yes to things?
Oh, definitely, actually. Sometimes when I probably shouldn't. Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day because from when that book came out, it's actually changed my way of thinking. I was a natural catastrophist, which I think has a subtle difference from pessimist. And now I just tend to say yes to most things if they're doable. Whether it's scuba diving or, trying something new. At the moment I'm writing for TV, which is, again, a whole new challenge because, I don't know, you get to your late 40s and you realise that life can be short and you may as well just throw yourself at everything that comes in your way.
Before we go on to this, Me Before You did completely change your life.
Yeah.
I know you've been asked that millions of times, but just tell me a bit about that.
Oh God, in so many ways. The main thing was, as a writer, with my first 8 books, not exactly troubling the bestseller charts, I'd really lost confidence in the idea that there was a market for the kind of books that I wanted to write. And what Me Before You did was gave me back the confidence to believe that, I could write for a mass market. And, thank God, the books that I've written since have also gone on to be bestsellers. So that, I think, for a writer is the main thing, to know that you have an audience. Personally, it's changed my life profoundly. Obviously, we don't worry about money in the way that we did, and I've also just met really amazing people, and I've had really amazing opportunities on the back of it. I now have a dual career. I write books and I write films, which is, kind of extraordinary to me and something I certainly couldn't have predicted before I started.
So now we're going to get you to show us your objects that you've brought today. So where should we start? What should we start with?
Okay. Oh, I think we should start with this. This is a scarf given to me by my editor, my publisher, Louise Moore of Penguin. I had lunch with her about a year ago, and she's the most stylish woman in the world. And she was wearing this scarf, and I'd seen it on her before, and I just said, as we were leaving, I think your scarf is absolutely gorgeous. And she immediately unwound it from her neck and said, oh, have it, I'm bored of it. And we had this ridiculous thing in a restaurant of me going, no, I don't want your scarf, take it back. And
you're wishing where you hadn't said anything.
Yeah, and then her getting really cross and saying, just take it. So in the end I took it and I wore it home, and I fell immediately in love with it. And you just get an item of clothing that you're going to wear to death. Got home, showed it to my family, and my daughter went, oh, it's Yves Saint Laurent. And I went, what?
Oh my God.
And it was. There's this tiny little label somewhere, if it's not fallen off, saying Yves Saint Laurent. So then I was in a complete...
We need to see the label, we need proof.
English,
we need visual proof.
I then went into a complete panic and texted Louise and said, I can't possibly take this scarf from you because it's Yves Saint Laurent.
Because it costs like hundreds of pounds.
And then she went into, there you go. I've never owned anything Yves Saint Laurent in my life. So then
beautiful.
It just became the most insane English kind of pushing back. And then the only way I could kind of get over my deep, deep discomfort with being given something this gorgeous was I then bought her a voucher from Net-a-Porter and emailed it to her so that she could at least replace her scarf. And then everybody was happy. And I actually have worn it probably 4 times a week since. I think people are probably bored of seeing me in it.
So if you had bought it yourself, it would cost per wear, it would have been like tuppence now.
It's the best value item of clothing I own. And there's something just, when you get a scarf that's the right length to kind of twist and it's light and it always just feels delicious, you know, it's an obscene thing to pay that much money for a scarf. If
I'm going to go and Google it in a minute and see how much
I wouldn't. No. But do you know what? It's worth every penny because I get such pleasure from it every single day.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, so that's
excellent editor.
Thank you. Excellent editor. Yeah. But I'm never going to tell her that I like anything that she's got on ever again because I can't run the risk that she'll just take it off and give it to me because she's profound. She's one of these people. She's done it to Marion Keyes as well, apparently. So we share an editor. So yeah, you have to be careful. I realised. Yeah.
Just don't say you like her top or her shoes.
Exactly. Exactly. She could have a long walk home. Next thing. Okay. So. 2 years ago, I went to New York with my daughter, and she hit 17, and we have this thing with our kids that when they hit 16, 17, whatever time frame kind of works in terms of the family schedule, they get to choose and go away with one parent for a kind of long weekend somewhere. My daughter picked New York.
They pick a parent?
Yeah.
Oh my God, pick a parent, pick a location,
We've
no
got
pressure.
3 kids, so you're kind of, you know, conscious that you're probably going to luck out at least
You're going to get one. What if you didn't though? What if
then you'd really messed up, hadn't you? You'd kind of know. So my daughter picked New York, and she was obsessed with Frida Kahlo at the time, and we found out that there was an exhibition of her work in the Botanical Gardens in, is it Brooklyn, I think? So we got the train out and we went and saw this exhibition, and I hadn't seen any Frida Kahlo stuff in the flesh up until that point. You know, you think you know what an artist's work is like, and it just moved me to tears. There's something about seeing the real work, and it's so intricate and it's so immediate, and I just remember having such a physical reaction to it. I'm sorry if that sounds horribly pretentious,
some of
but
it's
it was
so
shocking.
raw though, isn't
it?
And
the one with the broken spine is just, it just gets you. And then there was this fantastic gift shop.
I need to stroke it.
Yeah. So I got that from the gift shop afterwards because
so gorgeous.
I just loved it. And I think, you know, I know she's a well-worn icon for many women, but I just think in terms of what she did with her art and how she lived despite the many physical obstacles she had, and just the sheer kind of ballsy individualism of her, the way she dressed and the way she lived her life, I just think she has a lot to teach us all. So I love this. It just makes me happy. Yeah.
It's gorgeous. Next thing.
So this is, I'm a bit concerned that this is going to come off as show-offery, but this is what my publisher's Penguin gave me.
This is a silver penguin, isn't it?
It is a silver penguin. It's
That's
a Theo
how many
Fennell
books
penguin.
she
It's
sold.
also really lovely and tactile if you have
it's
a
heavy.
feel of him.
It's real.
And
it's not hollow.
I got gifted this when I hit a certain number of books, and to my embarrassment, I couldn't tell you.
Can you really not remember how many?
I can't remember how many, but I know that Jamie Oliver's got one, and I think Marion Keyes has got one. And it sits on my desk, and you know, when I think of how worried and sad I was, and you know, when I was kind of 40, just before everything went kind of nuts.
Was that how old you were when you wrote Me Before You?
Yeah. I think it was I wrote it in 2008, 2009. I think it was published in January 2012, and we couldn't publish it immediately because of contractual stuff. And then from 2012, literally January onwards, my life started to shift. And it's just a really nice reminder. I'm slightly embarrassed that it's a bit tarnished. It hasn't been polished.
No, it looks loved.
But it is loved. I can't tell you how much it's loved. I nearly didn't bring it because I'm so terrified of losing it.
I mean, just for anyone who doesn't know, Jojo didn't have a book contract when she wrote Me Before You. So Me Before You was written just out of sheer passion and belief
Yeah.
in the subject.
And I'd had to
wasn't
have a negotiation with my husband where I said, look, I feel like I really want to write this book, but it may mean that, you know, A, we don't get a deal. So that's a year of work that may not have any payback. And God bless him, he said, I think you should do it. And it was, again, a lesson to me in just pursuing something if you believe in it or not, which leads me to my next item, which is the other thing that sits on my desk in front of me, which is a Tracy Eamon handkerchief, which reads, "Be faithful to your dreams."
And is that, does it live in its box?
Well, this is actually a thing that my dad commissioned. My dad used to have a company that dealt in fine art. It didn't deal in fine art. It moved and stored fine art for everybody from the government art collection to the Queen. He'd built it up from nothing. And there were a good for a good decade, every Christmas, instead of sending company Christmas cards, he would commission artwork from up-and-coming artists and send out little pieces of art. So there are people everywhere who, I don't know if they would have thrown them away afterwards, but this was before Tracy Eamon really became kind of stratospheric. But I have a couple of these little things. So yeah, the company was called Momart, and and that's what they sent out to maybe 500 clients, and Dad always saved one for me.
It's amazing.
But it has a good message.
Yeah.
Be faithful to your dreams. And so that also sits on my desk. You know, it's a funny business, writing. It's so lonely sometimes, and it's very hard to maintain your confidence in what you're doing, often up to kind of 3/4 of the way through a book. And I think it's quite useful to have these little things. Sometimes I tape messages above my screen and yeah, things like that.
I think it's one of the things that people don't understand about writing, actually, because you see the aftermath.
Yeah.
Almost, you see the, you know, here's the book, here's the sales, here's the publicity. You don't see the 6 months sat in a room on your own.
Yeah.
Or maybe with a cat on your keyboard, but no, you know, and having to get up and do it every day with no...
Yeah, and trying to fit it around everything else, life getting in the way, and sometimes ripping things up halfway through and starting again, because sometimes you know in your heart that it's just not going to work, and sometimes you won't know that for a long time. I think one of the things I'm really enjoying about working in film and TV is the fact that it's a collaborative process. I know not every writer enjoys letting go or having notes on their work, but for me, I really like not being the only problem solver. You know, I ended up on a conference call with somebody last night throwing ideas around, and suddenly the answer to something became clear, and it was such a relief that it wasn't going to be me trudging to my desk in the morning at 6 o'clock just going, oh,
how do I get out of this?
Yeah, how do I work this out?
Do you think that's a change? I mean, can you imagine of having shared, I mean, obviously you have shared Will and Louisa now because you've written the film,
Yeah.
but could you imagine sharing Will and Louisa at the point you were writing Me Before You?
No. No, because that was such a singular story, and more than anything else I've ever written, it was such a balanced thing between humour and tragedy and the kind of news elements of it, and, you know, the kind of rom-com elements of it. It was, even as I was writing it, I was trying to keep control of all those elements, but I wasn't sure if it was working. It was really only when people started to read it that I had confidence that I'd got it right. But I think if I'd had other people's input, I think I would have lost the plot completely, literally. I would have lost that plot, yeah.
Did anyone ever try to get you to change the end?
No. When we sold the film rights to MGM, it was on the basis that there was no way I was going to change the ending.
And so, Louise didn't even suggest it when she brought the book?
Nobody did.
That's
to give
amazing,
them credit.
isn't it? That's amazing.
And actually, I think...
And the American publishers didn't?
No. Weirdly, what it did mean is that lots of people didn't want to read it, like in the trade, because they thought they knew what it was about. And, you know, people are nervous of a sad ending. But I honestly believe that if I'd given that book a different ending, it wouldn't have sold a tenth of what it sold.
No,
it's
right.
the ending that stays with you, unfortunately.
Yeah, one way and another.
Yeah.
On that note, next thing.
Okay, so the next thing this is Big Dog.
Big Dog is huge.
My godchildren. Big Dog is a rescue dog who came to us 2 years ago. She's a Pyrenean. They couldn't find a home for her because she was too old and too big, and nobody wants a big old rescue dog.
Big Dog is as big as you, isn't she?
She's 55 kilos, so I weigh slightly more than her, but not a huge amount more. I can certainly get into the back of a car more easily than she can. We actually have a ramp that we had to import from Germany so that she can get in and out of the car because she's too old to get up and down. I know, animals.
How old is she?
She's now 9. And we took her on knowing that Pyreneans rarely live past 11, and she's big for a Pyrenean. They very rarely go past 50 kilos. So we told the kids, this is a 4-year dog. And even as I picked her up from the rescue place, and she cried in the back of the car because up till then she thought she was going to another foster home. She'd been moved around so much, and so I had this huge creature crying like, ah! And I just thought, what have I done? What have I done? And honestly, the difference this creature has made to all our lives has been so immense and so positive, even though she's a gigantic pain in the arse, and you know, she has to go out for a wee every 3 hours because she's got an elderly bladder, and she doesn't like anybody coming to the house unless they're children. This is so indicative of the gentleness of these dogs when children come in. But if anybody she doesn't know, or in fact any man comes to the door, she turns into the Revenant. She goes onto her hind legs and appears at the window.
And she's really, I mean, she'd be way taller than
she's big. She's
me.
Yeah, much taller than me. And we don't get casual callers. She's just a dream. And it's really weird. I've had animals all my life, and yet every now and then you have an animal that you just have a weird connection with. And when I'm away, which I am sadly quite a lot, I miss her as much as I miss my children. And they know that, and they laugh about it because they miss her more than they miss me as well. It's just, there's just something about this dog. A friend of mine came and she said, she gets into your soul, and I can't really describe what she does, but there's something really magical about her. And in fact, I'll get teary talking about her because she's just, even if she's going to break my heart, but it will have been worth it because she's really special. I know everybody says that about their animals, but she really is. I love my other dog too, but I don't love him as much.
Yeah, oh no.
So yeah, she can go there. So the other thing, my other object is, I'm afraid, on my phone, which is my publisher's got this made for me about 3-4 years ago. And I love it so much, even though it's broken, that I won't update my phone because it would mean losing my phone case. Which is just such a pleasure because it feels like, you know, proper penguin.
It's real.
It's real.
A real book if it's got
that gives
penguin.
me pleasure every day, even though, you know, bits of it catch on my clothes now because it's got sharp corners and everything. So yes, I'm one of these people who's embarrassingly wedded to their phone. And I actually, although this isn't one of my items, I play Scrabble all day, every day on my phone. So this is actually really, really fitting. And I'm a terrible insomniac. And what I always make sure that I have friends in other countries, that if I'm awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, I can play a move with them. So yeah, and I'm one of those embarrassing people. If I get like something over 100, I will literally jump up and down in a public space with joy, you know, that I've managed to beat so-and-so.
Have you always been a Scrabble player?
No, it was only really when I discovered, I don't do computer games at all. I consider myself a non-addictive personality, and then I discovered online Scrabble.
And then that's it.
Yeah, I usually have about 6 games going on at once, but it's really bad because it kills your reading time. It really does, because at night you think, I'll just play one more move, and then instead of reading 10 pages, you've ended up sucked into the Scrabble thing. So
yeah. So that sleep therapist might say that has something to do with your insomnia.
Possibly, yeah. My husband really tells me off. He's like, do not pick up your phone when you're lying there awake. But if you've been lying awake for 40 minutes, it's really boring. So, you know, it's one of the few things you can do without turning on a light. You can actually, I find it quite comforting knowing that there are people across the globe, or even in England, who are also lying awake at 3 o'clock in the morning for various reasons.
Playing Scrabble on their phone. Lastly, so you've sold Me Before You has obviously been incredibly successful film. You've sold the film rights in After You. Have you written the script for After You?
I haven't, actually.
You haven't?
And there's lots of reasons for that, but Thea, the director, and I are definitely up for doing it at some point. I think MGM would be up for doing it as well. I don't know about Amelia. I think she would, but she had so many things lined up because obviously she has an alternative career as, you know, the Khaleesi. So I think the way we all left it was that we definitely wouldn't rule it out, and I think it might be something like the Bridget Jones thing, where it just happens in a few years, because we all really loved, and we loved working together. And actually, I've struggled with time over the past couple of years as well, and if I did it, I'd want to do it really well. So it's certainly not off the table. It's just that everybody's kind of busy, like the curse of modern life. Yeah, everybody's already got too many things that they're juggling.
And what next? I mean, obviously you've just finished this book and we're already going, what are you doing next? Ching.
Well, I know, it's a fair question with me because I never stop working. I really come to terms this year with the fact that I have proper workaholic tendencies and I actually need to start winding back.
Because you could stop. I mean, I know you wouldn't, but you could, surely.
I could stop. I think I would be utterly miserable if I did, because I really love work, and I think that's the problem with a lot of people who work too much. It's a privilege to do the thing that you love doing, so it's very hard to tell yourself not to do it. But I think perhaps a better way to describe it is I need to readjust the work-life balance thing.
I'll have one even.
Well, I think I'm talking to the right person here. That said, I'm working on a TV comedy pilot in the States with Warner Brothers and ABC, which has been a real learning curve again. I mean, this is the fun bit, that you just get to learn new technical skills, because obviously writing for TV, a half-hour comedy, is very, very different from writing feature films. I'm not sure if I've mastered either yet, but it's, you know, you're just conscious that you're learning all the time. So we're working on that at the moment. In a week and a half, I'm headed to Kentucky on a research trip for my next book, which is going to be about as far removed from these books as you can imagine. I'm going in a completely different direction. And I was very excited about it until I discovered that the small town in which I've chosen to stay is not just part of the opioid capital of America, but this small town is actually the nexus of the whole thing.
And that's not why you chose it.
It's not why I chose it, but yeah. So
a very different direction.
A very different direction, yeah. So I'm thinking about my accommodation choices quite carefully. You always know it's good when you Google your area and you go to Google and you say 4-star hotels within 50 kilometres of such and such, please, and they just go no. You're like, what do you mean no? 3-star hotels within, no. So it's like, I got to 2.5 and then I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go stay in a nearby town and drive a couple of hours each way every day. I think that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting trip, but I'm very excited. It's a thing that's rooted in a historic event, and it's got real parallels to things that are going on today, and it's quite it's to do with strong women, which is an obsession of mine, and I'm really, really excited to get going on it.
Thank you very much, Jojo.
Oh, thank you for having me.